No longer. Alimony, palimony. It's all financial. Love's an illusion.
It's the only illusion that counts, my friend.
Says who?
Anyone who's ever been in love.
Love sucks.
In 1985, a magazine article threw a bomb at his rising fame. It branded him with the infamous Brat Pack label. Andrew McCarthy has said that tag nearly destroyed his career. He was supposed to be the ultimate dream guy of the 80s, the soft-spoken romantic, the safe crush, the one moms approved of. Movies like Pretty in Pink made him Hollywood's sweetheart, but behind the scenes, things were spiraling fast. Off camera, his world was a mess. He was drinking way too much, shutting people out, and feeling like a total fake every time he smiled for the cameras. Deep down, he couldn't shake the thought that he didn't belong in that glossy Hollywood world. Then, out of nowhere in the early 2000s, he did something wild. He stepped completely away from the fame game. He disappeared from the scene and went on a totally different path, far from the flashing lights of LA. And when he came back years later, it wasn't the comeback anyone expected. So what really went down with Andrew McCarthy? Let's rewind the tape. Andrew Thomas McCarthy was born on November 29, 1962, in the quiet town of Westfield, New Jersey, a calm little suburb where chasing fame wasn't exactly the norm. His dad worked in investments, his mom was an artist, and Andrew, he said he always felt a strange emptiness, like something important was missing. He's described himself as shy, unsure, and constantly feeling out of place. Acting became his escape, the one thing that made him feel alive. It wasn't just pretending for him, it was a way to feel something real. After high school, he joined NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, studying under the same legendary teachers who trained icons like Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. But McCarthy wasn't into all that intense method acting stuff. He just wanted to connect, to lose himself in different lives for a while. His big break came in 1983 with a coming-of-age drama alongside Jacqueline Bisset and a young Rob Lowe. It wasn't a blockbuster, but everyone noticed him. Those piercing blue eyes and that dreamy, faraway look made casting directors think this guy is our next romantic lead, and they were right. By 1985, he landed Heaven Help Us, a nostalgic drama about Catholic school kids in the 60s. Again, not a smash hit, but it got him through the right doors. Directors loved him, producers trusted him, cameras adored him. He was reliable, charming, and effortlessly photogenic. But inside, McCarthy couldn't shake one haunting thought. While everyone else looked confident, he still felt like an imposter, faking his way through fame. That fake-it-till-you-make-it feeling didn't just fade, it followed Andrew McCarthy for years. But 1985, that year flipped his whole world upside down. He landed a major role in St. Elmo's Fire, Joel Schumacher's emotional drama about a group of college grads trying to figure out adulthood. The cast was stacked. Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Demi Moore, Judd Nelson, Ali Sheedy, and Mary Winningham, basically every hot young name in Hollywood under 25. The movie did decent at the box office, but what came after? Total earthquake. In June 1985, New York Magazine dropped David Blum's now legendary article, Hollywood's Brat Pack. It was supposed to spotlight Emilio Estevez, but it turned into a straight-up hit piece. The story dragged the young actors as spoiled, shallow, and entitled, calling them interchangeable party kids. Blum threw McCarthy and his co-stars under the same messy label, the Brat Pack. McCarthy later said that article felt like a death sentence. Overnight, he wasn't just Andrew McCarthy anymore. He was branded Andrew McCarthy, Brat Pack member. And once Hollywood stamps you with a label like that, it walks into every meeting before you do. Still, the guy kept getting work, proving he wasn't just another pretty face with a bad headline. In 1986, he starred opposite Molly Ringwald in Pretty in Pink, playing Blaine McDonough, the charming, preppy rich kid who falls for the artsy outsider from the wrong side of town. But McCarthy gave Blaine something special, a quiet guilt, like he knew deep down he wasn't as perfect as people thought. The movie blew up big time, turning into a teen classic and making McCarthy the heartbreak everyone rooted for. But what really made him stand out? He wasn't your typical movie idol. While other actors had fans split, girls crushing, guys rolling their eyes, McCarthy had universal appeal. Rob Lowe had that flawless golden boy look, sure, but some people found him too untouchable. McCarthy, though, he had this laid-back, real guy energy. He wasn't trying too hard or acting like Hollywood royalty. He was the kind of dude that looked just as lost as the rest of us, and that made him magnetic. Women adored his sweet, thoughtful vibe, and men saw him as someone you could actually kick back and talk to. He never came off full of himself. If anything, he seemed uncertain, sometimes awkward, and that made people trust him. In an 80s world full of egos, McCarthy was the quiet storm, and that made him shine even brighter. Then came Less Than Zero in 1987, and everything changed again. The movie, based on Bret Easton Ellis's controversial novel, ripped open the dark underbelly of LA privilege, teens drowning in excess, cocaine, and despair. McCarthy played Clay, a college kid coming home for Christmas only to find his best friend, played by Robert Downey Jr., completely broken, addicted, lost, and selling himself just to survive. It was McCarthy's rawest performance yet. No charm, no safety net, just brutal honesty on screen. He later admitted it was the most real he'd ever felt in a role, because by then his own drinking was getting out of control too. He wasn't at Downey's level, but he understood that hollow ache, that numbness his character lived in. For once, Andrew McCarthy wasn't just playing a part, he was living it. Critics brushed off Less Than Zero as another slick, overly polished Hollywood drama, but Andrew McCarthy knew the truth behind that emptiness. That lost, hollow look in his eyes, it wasn't acting, it was real. His performance wasn't some character study, it was a mirror of where his own life was headed. Later that same year, he did a total 180 and jumped into Mannequin, a wild, romantic comedy about a guy who falls in love with a department store mannequin that magically comes to life. It was ridiculous, cheesy, and totally camp, but man, was it fun! The movie raked in over $42 million and eventually turned into a cult classic. That was the crazy part about McCarthy in the 80s. He was everywhere, yet somehow nowhere. His face was plastered across posters, but deep down, even he didn't know who Andrew McCarthy was anymore. By the time the 90s rolled around, the Brat Pack label had done serious damage. McCarthy didn't sugarcoat it. He said straight up that Hollywood just didn't know what to do with him once he outgrew the teen idol image. He wasn't rugged enough to be the traditional leading man, and he wasn't quirky enough to be a true character actor. He had been typecast, the sensitive guy, the romantic boy next door. And when that door closed, so did the opportunities. In 1988, he reunited with Molly Ringwald for Fresh Horses, a darker, grittier love story about a college student who falls for a troubled girl from rural Kentucky. On paper, it sounded perfect. The dream duo from Pretty in Pink reunited. But audiences didn't bite. Critics barely paid attention, and whatever spark the two had before just didn't land this time. The magic was gone. He tried switching things up with Kansas, playing a drifter caught up in a small-town bank robbery, but the film barely made a ripple. He kept hustling, still booking roles, but they were shrinking fast. Then came Weekend at Bernie's in 1989, a wild comedy about two guys pretending their dead boss was still alive. It became a surprise hit and even got a sequel, but McCarthy later admitted he did it for the paycheck, not passion. Even though the movie found cult status years later, back then it just felt like a step down for him. In 1991, he he tried to get serious again with Year of the Gun, a political thriller set in 1970s Italy, but it barely made noise. In 1993, he had a supporting part in The Joy Luck Club, a huge critical hit, yet by then, it was clear McCarthy wasn't the leading man anymore. In 1994, Getting In came and went without buzz. Dream Man in 1995 went straight to video. No premieres, no headlines, no excitement. He wasn't bombing, but he wasn't shining either. He had become invisible in the very world that once couldn't get enough of him. And as the spotlight faded, his drinking got worse. McCarthy has called this time deeply disorienting, like waking up from a dream that wouldn't end. In his 20s, he couldn't walk down the street without being recognized, people telling him he was special, destined for greatness. Then suddenly, silence. The phone stopped ringing, auditions disappeared, and when offers did come, they felt hollow. He started writing about the places he wandered through, not as a Hollywood name chasing relevance, but as a man trying to rebuild himself. Those words became his therapy, his compass, his lifeline. What started as scribbles and notebooks slowly turned into full-blown travel essays that caught the eye of editors who noticed something rare in his work. It wasn't glamorous travel writing meant to sell a dream. It was real, honest, raw, and vulnerable. He wrote about getting lost in strange cities, about loneliness, about that aching gap between who you are and who you thought you'd become. By the early 2000s, McCarthy did what few in Hollywood ever dare. He walked away. He stepped off the stage, out of the spotlight, and built a whole new career. He became a travel writer. No scripts, no cameras, no fake smiles, just truth. His essays weren't about showing off luxury hotels or fancy resorts. They were about self-discovery, about confronting emptiness and finding meaning again. In 2010, his quiet dedication paid off. McCarthy was named editor-at-large for National Geographic Traveler. Talk about a full-circle moment. Hollywood heartthrob turned respected journalist. He still holds that title today. Along the way, he published several books, including The Longest Way Home in 2012, a deeply personal memoir about traveling the world in search of something he couldn't even name. Then came Just Fly Away in 2017, a young adult novel that reflected on family, honesty, and second chances. But here's the twist. McCarthy insists travel writing wasn't the comeback. It was never about reclaiming fame. It was about reclaiming himself. He says writing gave him something acting never could, a real sense of purpose. On screen, he was always performing, always bending into someone else's idea of who he should be. But with writing, he didn't have to pretend. He could finally just be. Around that same time, he found a new love in storytelling, directing. He didn't go after big Hollywood blockbusters either. He started directing episodes of hit TV shows like Gossip Girl, Orange is the New Black, The Blacklist, Grace and Frankie, and Dead to Me. Dozens of episodes across dozens of shows. He says he loves directing because it's not about being seen. It's about seeing the story come to life, helping others shine, shaping something that actually matters. By then, McCarthy didn't crave the spotlight anymore. He didn't need red carpets or magazine covers. He just wanted to feel useful, to create, to guide, to connect. But while his career found new purpose, his personal life told a more complicated story. He married his college sweetheart, Carol Schneider, in 1999, and they had 2 children, Sam and Willow. But by 2005, the marriage was over. Carol later said he wasn't emotionally available, that he didn't know how to let people in, that he'd been running from closeness the same way he ran from everything else that scared him. In 2011, he found love again, marrying Irish writer and activist Dolores Rice. They have a daughter together, and McCarthy says this relationship feels different, not because he became some brand new person, but because he finally stopped pretending to be one. And then came the truth bomb, his 2021 memoir, Brat. In it, McCarthy got brutally honest about his long battle with alcohol. He wasn't the wild, tabloid-style celebrity drinker. No DUIs, no scandals. He said he just drank every single day for years, quietly trying to numb the voice that kept whispering he wasn't enough. Fame in your 20s does something wild to your mind. It twists your sense of self in ways most people will never understand. You're told you're special, adored, different. But deep down, you don't feel special at all. You've got everything people dream of: money, fame, fans. But inside, it's just empty noise. You start believing you're the broken one, that everyone else has it figured out while you're just pretending to belong. For Andrew McCarthy, alcohol was the shortcut to silence that chaos. For a while, the drinks numbed the doubts, the loneliness, the endless pressure to be somebody. But eventually, the haze stopped helping. He got sober, not because of some big dramatic collapse or rehab miracle, but because one day, he just realized he didn't want to live like that anymore. It wasn't about hitting rock bottom. It was about finally wanting something real. He's been brutally open about therapy, too, how he had to learn to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. And he says getting older has been the biggest relief of all, because he finally stopped caring about what everyone else thought. Maybe that's the real redemption story. Not that he escaped fame, but that he stopped letting fame own him. For decades, McCarthy wanted nothing to do with the Brat Pack label. He avoided interviews, skipped nostalgia specials, and refused to keep reliving those wild 1980s years. But in 2021, he finally confronted it head-on with his memoir, Brat. The book pulled no punches. It was raw, honest, even self-critical. He laid it all bare: the pressure, the confusion, the highs, and the emptiness that came after. But apparently even that wasn't enough closure. In 2024, McCarthy took it one step further and directed Brats, a Hulu documentary that reunited the surviving Brat Pack members: Demi Moore, Emilio Estevez, Ali Sheedy, Rob Lowe, the whole crew. For the first time in decades, they sat down and talked openly about what that label did to them. There was no sugarcoating, no glossy nostalgia, just truth. McCarthy didn't bash Hollywood, but he didn't romanticize it either. He said the film industry in the 80s was both intoxicating and isolating, a place where you were constantly told you were special, but only if you stayed valuable. The second you stopped being bankable, the love disappeared. He described how fake some of it felt: relationships built on convenience, friendships based on usefulness, and how fast people ghosted once you were no longer the guy. Yet somehow, through all of it, he found gratitude. That insane ride, from fame to obscurity to personal rebirth, taught him something huge. Your identity can't come from other people's applause. It has to come from you. It has to be built from something deeper, something real. Now McCarthy is still part of the entertainment world, but it's all on his terms. He directs television because he loves storytelling. He writes because it keeps him grounded. And he travels because it reminds him that the world is so much bigger than red carpets and movie premieres. He's totally cool with the fact that most people still think of him as the guy from Pretty in Pink. He doesn't fight that anymore. It's just one chapter in a much bigger story. McCarthy says aging has been the greatest gift of all, because it finally gave him permission to stop performing, to stop chasing approval, and to just exist. After all those years of pretending to be someone else, Andrew McCarthy finally found peace by being exactly who he is. And that might be his most powerful role yet. And that, right there, is the real happy ending. Not fame, not some picture-perfect redemption arc, and not even total clarity. So what really happened to Andrew McCarthy? He didn't vanish. He simply stopped living by everyone else's expectations. He refused to play the game, refused to fake a smile for the sake of nostalgia, and refused to pretend that the 80s were the peak of his life, because they weren't. Instead, he became something far more grounded: a traveler who searches for meaning, a writer who tells his truth, a director who builds stories from behind the camera, a husband, a father, and most importantly, a man who finally learned how to be present. He spent his 20s being told he was special, his 30s wondering why he couldn't feel that way, and his 40s and 50s building a life that didn't depend on anyone's applause. The Brat Pack label nearly broke him, but it didn't win. It never truly defined who he was. Andrew McCarthy didn't fade out. He grew up.
And in doing so, he found a peace that fame could never buy. If you grew up watching him or maybe discovered his work later through his books or directing, drop your favorite role or the part of his story that shocked you the most in the comments. Let's talk about the man who walked away from Hollywood's illusion and finally found himself.